Hello and welcome back to 60 Minutes. I'm your host Yana Kapiagi, here to interview the one and only John Alfred Shout. I will be asking John questions about the wars he served in and the times before it. Now John, I have read about your courageous efforts online and became so interested that I just needed to know more. Thank you for making a short visit from your grave. Would it be okay to start asking some questions now? Sure, a pleasure to be here. Fire away. Now, tell me about your early life and how you became a soldier in the war. Well, I was born on the 7th of August 1881 in Wellington, New Zealand. I was the son of my London-born father, John Shout Cook, and Irish mother, Agnes Nee McGovern. I was the eldest of my other 8 siblings. My siblings and I lived a privileged life and were privately educated in our younger years. I used this to become a carpenter in my hometown and in later years moved to South Africa with my half-elder brother, William McGovern. I travelled to South Africa in 1900 to continue pursuing carpentry and to see the world. I heard there were some amazing opportunities in Australia, therefore I moved in 1905 and in 1907 settled in Darlington, Sydney with my beautiful wife and daughter, while still working as a carpenter. In this same year, I served part-time in Sydney as an officer in the local military force with the experience I had as a sergeant in the Boer War, South Africa. What wars were you enlisted in and what roles did you play during these wars? In 1900, I joined the New Zealand contingent to the South African War, serving as a sergeant in the border house. I was wounded at least once, but in 1903 I became a sergeant in the Cape Field Artillery. Several years later I joined the AIF as soon as war was declared, and I worked as a foundation officer on the 1st Battalion and took part in the landing on Gallipoli on the 25th of April 1915. In recognition of my efforts from the landing and onwards, I was promoted to captain on the 29th of July after hearing the dispatches. To answer your question, I took part in both World War I and the South African War and served in the AIF and was both a sergeant and captain. What is the AIF that you served in? Well, the AIF stands for Australian Imperial Force and was the first AIF ever to be formed. It was the main expeditionary force of the Australian Army during the World War I. The AIF included the Australian Flying Corps, AFC. It was formed on the 15th of August 1914 and was an all-volunteer force. By the end of the war, the AIF had gained a reputation as being a well-trained and highly efficient military force, playing a significant role in the final Allied victory. However, this reputation came at a very high cost, with a casualty rate among the highest of any belligerent for the war. What medals have you received and what were your actions to receive them? As well as receiving the Military Cross and Victoria Cross, I was also mentioned in dispatches by General Sir Ian Hamilton, the General Officer commanding a Mediterranean Expeditionary Force, in acknowledgement of my efforts from the landing on the 25th of April up to the 5th of May. Cited for my conspicuous courage and ability at Walker's Ridge, I was the first member of my battalion to be so honoured. I was awarded the Military and Victoria Cross after surviving many injuries. However, my proudest achievement was saving many wounded soldiers in the front line. What propaganda was used to influence men to become soldiers and serve in World War I? Well, the response of Australian men hearing the news of the declaration of war was one of almost unanimous excitement and devotion. Australian men rushed to enlist in droves, but many were turned away because they were not able to meet the rigorous physical standards of the time. These standards, which included of a minimum height of at least 167.6 centimetres and a chest size of 86.4 centimetres, as well as having a full set of teeth without any fillings. Luckily, Yana, I was able to meet these guidelines. Also, I thought, for those who were unable to meet the outcome of standards were often devastated. It was declared that all men aged 18 to 35 must serve in the military. War was promoted using posters around town and was described as a luxury holiday. Many young men saw joining the military as an adventure and an opportunity to see the world. They may have also been spurred on by friends and family. Obviously, war was also promoted to Australian men as a way to become a man and stand up for their country. Little did myself and others know what we were getting ourselves into. As the death toll and the popularity of war grew, so did the pressure on boys 16 and 17 years old to volunteer. Were you injured during war, before your death, and how did you overcome these wounds? Like most Australian soldiers, I was one of the many wounded during war. During one of the toughest battles in war, I fully exposed myself to the Turks' fire and refused to leave the front line. As the fighting wore on, the Turks closed in on the Australian trench, and I led a bayonet charge to hold them at bay. I was later wounded a second time with a bullet passing through my arm. Therefore it was useless, but still I refused to leave. Soon after, I was wounded a third time, and unfortunately had to be evacuated for medical treatment. Thank goodness I still managed to carry several wounded men out of the front line. On the 11th of May, while still in battle, I was injured once again, suffering yet another bullet wound to my arm. I was evacuated to the hospital ship HMHS Gascon, but having sufficiently recovered, rejoined my unit 15 days later. I learned that I did not want to give up on my fellow diggers, still fighting against the Turks. Looking back, what occurred on the 25th of April whilst yourself and other men arrived at Anzac Cove? Myself and the men of the 1st Australian Brigade landed ashore at Anzac Cove between 5:30 and 7:30 a.m. among the 2nd and 3rd waves of Australian troops. The 1st Battalion was meant to be held in reserve, but because of great casualties was soon forced into battle. Following a request for reinforcements, I moved up with one of the 1st Battalion companies to the hill features Baby 700. At around 11 a.m, I led a party of men to hold the rear left flank of the hill as part of the Australian rearguard action. At 16:30 p.m, the Turks broke through the defensive line, and myself along with other Australian soldiers were forced to abandon our position on Baby 700. I was one of the last to evacuate and withdrew down towards the beach. Can you describe one of the worst aspects of war, what these conditions were like, and what difficulties arose from these conditions? I would definitely say that the trenches were one of the most difficult aspects of war. Each soldier usually spent 8 days in the front line and 4 days in reserve trench. Soldiers were left with cold, wet and minimal sleep. And on rations, the only thing that would keep us going was the odd letter or parcel from home and the cigarettes that were shared among us. Friends were shot only meters away, horrible memories that often gave me nightmares in the future years. When the army was short of men, soldiers had to spend weeks literally rotting away in the trenches. An effect of this is known as trench foot. It is a medical condition caused by prolonged exposure from the feet to damp, unsanitary and cold conditions. It is one of many immersion foot syndromes. Many soldiers died in the trenches from hunger, exhaustion and medical issues such as infections. And the ones that survived the trenches were often left suffering from physical or mental pain. If you were given the chance to enlist into World War I once again to serve for your country, would you take the opportunity? Well, Yana, this is a very hard question because even though the memories are haunting and it was the hardest and longest 4 years of my life, I would do it all over again in order to save my fellow soldiers. It was a way to serve for Australia, my home. I believe that I made an impact to World War I. Only a few other soldiers that fought probably think the same way about themselves. Whilst others didn't make a massive impact, every soldier counts and sacrificed their life in order to save their country. The horrible memories have scarred me for life, but there was nothing better than being reunited with my family after the war was over. Wow, those answers were truly amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I learnt much more than expected, and I wish you all the best for your safe journey home. Thank you to you, Yana, and I hope you continue to extend your knowledge of war and soldiers as much as possible. Thank you for having me on 60 Minutes. It was a pleasure.